All right. So, okay, we can let them go. How are you?
I'm great, Santita.
Good. Oh,
On my end, the feed is super loud. I could barely hear you.
okay. You can, okay.
Yeah,
Now. Good, good, good.
perfect.
Thank you, thank you. Always let me know.
Sure
And
thing. Time the best.
yep. So we've got a lot going on. Trying to figure out if I'm gonna still be able to go to France because they're trying to close it. Really,
That
non-vaccinated
takes time.
persons were able to go, were able to come in. My father called me last night. He said, I think you might catch the devil trying to get in." I said, "Well, we're gonna see." Um, because um, my stance is what it is. You know, it, I said there are too many people who are having problems. I said, I said we're still in clinical trials. Does anyone not remember that? What is up? This is still a
Yeah,
clinical trial.
that's it.
And when you start looking at, one of my best friends, there was no one closer to me than Candace. She died last week. I didn't know they
Oh
found her
no.
2 days later. Yeah. And she'd had a heart
Wow.
attack in the middle of the night.
Okay.
She lost a lot of weight. She'd done it very, very safely. She was moving away from meat and almost to a plant based diet. And she was doing it in a very responsible way. This is someone who, this girl went to Yale at 15, okay?
Yeah.
Extremely bright and very, very responsible. Um,
Oh,
and she and I had the same stance on this. That you and I have had. Like, hey,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
we just let's cool our jets. Let's find out what we're in, because when you travel, you've got to take vaccines. So the discussion is, that unvaccinated people can spread it. That's not true. I had all the people, I think almost everybody in my building clearly has had these shots, and you see them on the elevator, and I'm like, you can go down there. I'm like, oh no, I've been vaccinated. I'm like, do you know you still can have it? No. You know what, Stephen? When I had to get tested on Saturday. For one of my girlfriends, another one, and she, asked that we get COVID tested. And I didn't mind that. But do you know that when I looked at my papers, as I went for a test, they classify
Okay.
you as COVID asymptomatic when you walk in. I said, I'm not COVID
Hmm.
asymptomatic. I don't have it. If I had it,
Yeah.
I do it. Nothing to admit. It's just something to get rid of.
Sure.
Why? I said, so does everybody in America, is everybody COVID asymptomatic until they take a test? Because you can
I
still
just
walk
answered.
around with COVID having gotten the shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
Hmm.
what is this?
Yeah. What's going on here?
Honey, I'm
Hmm.
so over it. Oof.
You
Because
and me both.
well, it's bothersome because you see, um, because a lot of people we're not getting the information that we need. That's the thing.
True. Very
And
true.
that for me is the problem. It's like, hold on. Um, we're not getting the information that we need. That's my only thing. I'm like, just give us the right information, and then we
Yeah.
can
Correct and play.
the correct
Let us make
information.
it.
You know,
We we don't need a filter. Just give it to us raw.
just give there. That's all I need. That's all. Just tell me what I'm looking at, and that way, I can. And then also tell me about these therapeutics at work. Because
Correct.
it's like, wait a minute, if I get it, what do I take? No, 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 because they have medicines that, yes, I'm talking to everybody here. If you get the flu, you take Tamiflu, it knocks it out. knocks your flu out in like a day or two. There are some
Yes.
medicines that you can take when you get COVID that behave the same way.
Yes.
The reports have now come
They
out that
do.
Donald Trump was very, 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 he was gravely ill when he was when he had COVID. You know, he's older and all of that, but he
Sure.
was taking all of these therapeutics that saved his life. Shoot,
Mm-hmm.
don't deny me. Frankly, that's something that he was talking about. You know, the vaccines, these shots are not the only answer. They do work in many, many instances, and in some they don't for people. And I think
Sure.
we need to have a real discussion about that so we can all be healthy.
That's it.
You know, I mean, I've never heard of anything where you don't discuss me saying, "Well, you give me a shot."
All the
I'm like, what?
right.
What? Mm-mm. Y'all should not be pleased with that because that sounds crazy to me. But 30 seconds. Okay, so we'll come on up, everybody. Ooh, right. Okay. Okay. All right. Hey, down to Gambia. Love it. You can turn that up just a bit. Thank you.
This is the Santita Jackson Show. Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Victorious. It's Tuesday, July 13, 2021. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, at AM 950 Radio. My family to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. You know, we're going to have some people from Texas on the show today. That's right. One of the runaway state representatives will be with us, Ron Reynolds, along with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who has some experience in this because he had to run away when he was in the state Senate 18 years ago. 18 years ago, and did a big piece in in the New York Times talking about that at the time because his wife, Leisha, who's one of my fellow Howardites. She was a year or so ahead of me at Howard. She was having a baby. And he said, wait a minute, I might miss all of this. What is going on here? So, you know what, everybody? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's happening in Haiti, the importance of passing the For the People Act with John Nichols, and this voting rights. We've got to do all of this because what's happening in Texas is happening in at least 47 other states in some form or fashion, the rolling back of our voting rights. And you don't want to wait till election day to see that your name has been purged, to find out that there's only one polling place where you can vote, yes, what happened in Kentucky. One polling place for more than 660,000 voters. Can you imagine? Yeah, these are the things that we're having to deal with. And these state representatives and state senators are out of Texas at great personal risk. Indeed, the state, their Governor Abbott, has threatened to arrest them. That's right, and quarantine them because if they have to have 2/3 to be able to hold a vote, because they're out of state, they can't hold a vote. That's why they have to leave. They had to leave. So we don't know what's going to happen there, but we are going to talk about that. And of course, Dr. Shanina Knighton will be talking with us, giving us the latest update on our health and COVID-19. We had planned to have a bigger discussion today about getting a primary care physician because so many of us don't have one. We're going to do that in another day or so. So what I want to do now is hear your voices. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text. Talk to me this morning. What do you think about these voting rights? What do you think about that? What do you think about what's happening in Haiti? Turns out there's a lot going on down there. A lot. And now this interim government now wants the American government to step in. What? We occupied that country before and not the revolution for 60 years. So what is that about? Oh, there's so much to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show today. So let's get to some of these headlines so we can get some good news from Pastor Stephen Thurston from Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. Oh, all right, everybody. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 78 degrees, mostly cloudy. It is foggy right now. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 126 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 31 points. The S&P 500 closed up 15. Of course, Major League Baseball is on the All-Star break. They had the home run derby yesterday, and it was fabulous. And the Phoenix Suns, and the Bucks will pick up in the NBA World Championships in just a couple of days. Well, everybody, the coronavirus. Americans need to make a choice. That is what CNN medical experts are reporting. Get vaccinated or actually follow through on safety precautions like masking and social distancing. That choice is playing out elsewhere as well. COVAX, the global vaccine sharing initiative, signed deals with 2 Chinese pharmaceutical companies for more than 500 million COVID-19 vaccines by the first half of next year to try to combat the spreading Delta variant. In Seoul, South Korea, the health ministry has implemented an unusual gym restriction: no fast music, which at reasons can lead to rapid and heavy breathing, everybody. Back in the U.S., the FDA warned of a possible increased risk of a rare neurological complication known as the Guillain-Barré syndrome. You know, it's when you are really, really exhausted, really, really tired, and it's tied to the J&J vaccine. The FDA said it hasn't established that the vaccine could cause the syndrome, just an increase in reports that it is happening. We're going to be talking about the Texas State House Democrats that left the state yesterday in an effort to block Republicans from passing a restrictive new voting law during a special legislative session. Stay tuned to the Santita Jackson Show. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, a state House Representative Reynolds from Texas, and of course, Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis will be on with us to talk about this later on in the show, along with John Nichols. In addition to voting rights, the president will be going to Philadelphia today to give an historic speech supporting voting rights. Can't wait to hear what he has to say there. Now, Senate Democrats have unveiled a $3.7 billion proposal to supplement security funding at the Capitol and beyond following the January 6th insurrection. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think? Where do you think we are in America? Boy, there's a lot going on. What about the infrastructure plan? It seems like that is stuck. Well, according to a new report from Data for Progress and Evergreen Action, this infrastructure package, as it is currently constructed, $2.6 trillion in climate investments, would create 26 million green jobs over a decade. It's interesting. There's a progressive backlash to the billionaire blastoff, everybody. Progressive politicians and advocates this week responded to the so-called billionaire blastoff with derision, according to this Common Dreams report, and calls to solve earthly problems of people and planet before spending billions of their own in taxpayer dollars shooting for the stars. Representative Jamal Bowman out of New York said this: our social, political, and economic systems are idea that tax breaks for billionaires buying leisurely space travel is more important than feeding, clothing, and housing. All Charlottesville has done something really, really huge. It's taking down 2 more statues deemed offensive, this time to the indigenous people of our nation, Native Americans, in a weekend of removals. So that's just a few of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Good news coming to us from the pastor of the House of Hope, the Salem Baptist Church. We love Reverend James Meeks, and we love you, Pastor Stephen Thurston. What's on your mind? And let me not forget, First Lady Jamel Meeks. What's on your mind today? And Pastor Stephen Thurston, right, the First Lady, who I call my auntie, but I'll just keep on going with that.
So good to be with you again today, Santita. I want to talk about the challenge of change. I've been meeting with several churches and several leaders over the past few weeks, as many churches in our community are going back into the building, but in-person gathering. And so they've engaged my consulting company to talk about change. And I've discovered a few things. When the subject of change is brought up, most people would suggest that they're really open to it, that they're future focused and they're welcoming of innovation and fresh ideas. But that's only partly true, because the reality of humanity is that most of us are only open to change in the areas that we want changed. That doesn't always mean it's where we need change. Our openness to change is often contradicted by our response when real change is actually proposed and presented. I often hear a whole lot of excuses when the rubber is time to hit the road. Here's the deal. The world is ever changing and people are ever growing. So we as individuals must be changing as well, especially for those of us who serve in some type of leadership capacity. We have to help people move into their future. Leaders invent processes and products and services that help to facilitate real change. And what you present has to be substantive. It's got to be innovative, paradigm changing, and or a new way of thinking. But at the same time, you have to be sensitive to the fact that the perception of change is just like surgery. It can be minor for the leader, but major for your followers. So to minimize the pain that can be associated with leading change at both the personal and the professional level, let me give us 3 things that we should be mindful of. This has helped me tremendously, personally, again, as well as leading leaders in shifting organizations and institutions. Number 1, tolerance is connected to trust. When you ask people to change, you're asking them to trust your promise that the future is going to be better than the past. And so the tolerance that people have for proposed change or changes will be proportional to the relational trust level that exists between you and them. I've discovered, Santita, that people follow people more than they follow ideas and proposals. And so you have to recognize that you earn trust with consistent decisions that improve environments and by delivering promises that you make to people. Number 2, change is more about heart than head. Change is more emotional transition than factual, logical, or rational decisions. And most leaders make decisions based on facts, the black and white, the data, the numbers. And it seems like a clean process until a fact-based change meets a feelings-based follower. For many, change is emotional because it's actually a grieving process. An individual's comfort zone is shattered and new beginning is required. So you've got to help people work through the stages of grief. It's about helping people to adjust at the heart level, not just the head level, for the future that they're being asked to embrace. And then finally, number 3, don't discount dialogue. Don't tell people what needs to happen. Rather, initiate some dialogue about what might happen. It's important to ask the right questions and get people thinking about the future. And remember, the person asking the question controls the conversation. So you want a dialogue, because dialogue isn't about manipulating people to agree with you. It's about you expressing something and giving them the space to respond and retort and push back even if necessary. Dialogue is about helping people to feel connected to the process. And so as we move forward, as we lead people, as we usher people into places of new normal and new futures, there's going to be some challenge to change. And I believe that if you keep these 3 tidbits in mind that I've suggested today, you might find yourself in a successful position on the other side of the conversation.
You know, that is an absolutely brilliant set of insights. Just very quickly, why is it so hard, very quickly, for us to change? We say we want it, but is it because we're frightened of it?
It boils down to our comfort zone, safety, security. Those are foundational human needs. And anytime we get pushed outside of our comfort zone, even if it's a change that we know we need to make, we're just so comfortable in our comfortable space And it can be difficult for us to move even an inch to the other side, even if we know down the road this is going to be most beneficial and most needful. Come on, Santita. You know, when we go out to eat, we're supposed to eat healthy, but then that dessert menu comes. And we know we said, I need to change, Santita. I need to change, Stephen. I need to do better. But that dessert menu starts looking so good to us, and we don't want to move out of our comfort zone. So we order the key lime pie or the cheesecake or the brownie
No, you
or the
just,
ice cream.
no, you leave me
Whatever
alone.
amazing.
This is the last time I'm going out with you. How about that? Yeah. Put me on Front Street. Yeah. And the gravy laden as an entree. Yeah.
Yeah. No. They'll kill you, though.
No, you don't. Everyone, if you see him, he is Reed Slim. He is not going to get out of those tailored suits. I'm not mad at you, darling. I love the author of Mirror Moments, everybody. Mirror Moments. You need one. He just put one up to me. Not feeling that today, but I love him. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. Happy birthday. Is today the day?
Tomorrow.
All right now,
Tomorrow
because
is the day.
we celebrate. We got to do it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Hey,
ma'am.
hey,
Let's do it.
hey, hey, hey. That's right. Mine's on Saturday. Is it on Saturday? Whenever the
Yes,
17th
Saturday.
is. Okay, thank you. Oh, there you go. Oh my gosh, I got so much going on. I've missed that piece. But I love it. Thursday. Wonderful hearing your
Love you
voice.
too.
Always, always, everybody coming up. We're going to have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds and Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis and John Nichols to talk about why these state representatives have run away, what they hope to achieve, and will they be arrested? Hmm. And then, of course, what's happening in Haiti, the latest and the greatest. Boy, the mystery deepens. But you know what? The mystery is deepening with us on these vaccines, on these shots. I mean, it seems like more and more every day we're finding out, a lot more about them. We're now finding that, at least we're hearing in some quarters that we need boosters if we've had the shots. And then in other quarters, we're hearing, well, no, not so fast. Uh, yeah, because it seems like the immunity's wearing off pretty quickly. Because I would expect that I would hope that it would last like a year, 2 years, but no, there's not that. And then the J&J vaccine, they've had a lot of challenges with this vaccine, and this is the one shot. This is the one shot deal. There is a rare nerve syndrome. You remember Cher had this some years ago. What is it, Guillain-Barré, where you're exhausted. People are saying when they have it, they cannot even move. They're so exhausted. They're just exhausted. But it's a very, very serious illness. And so now the FDA has warned that this could lead to an increased risk of developing this syndrome. So let me just start with you because we were going to talk about about getting our frontline medical staff in order, primarily our primary care physician. We're going to come back to that another day. But it seems like every day, Dr. Shanina Knighton, she's a scholar from Case Western Reserve University and one of the few infection preventionists in the world. In the world, everybody. There's 7 billion of us in this world, and I think there are only like 16,000 of you. So that's a whole lot of people you've got to take care of. Help me to understand what we need to understand about this. I mean, do you have to wait till you develop it before? I mean, is there, if you think that you've got certain proclivities, do certain vaccines give you, uh, yield, say, certain adverse reactions? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
So,
is that what we're finding out?
yes. So the thing is, and I just want to be clear that I'm not an immunologist, okay, but am a nurse that potentially can take care of patients with adverse reactions. I can tell you that it is different when you are giving the COVID-19 vaccine and immediately there isn't a reaction. But just as you pointed out, there are starting to be increased risk of the diseases, whether we were talking about the blood clots associated with the vaccines, whether we're talking about the Guillain-Barré syndrome that's now being attached to the vaccine. Things like this happen. And one of the things that I have always cautioned people of is that there is no one shoe fits all model. And one of the things that we are still not aware of, which is to me a little bit disturbing for the public, is that when individuals show up with these rare autoimmune disorders that are attached to the vaccine, they are not giving us the profile. I'm not asking for the names of the individuals. I'm not asking for anything personal. But if they were to give us the profile, meaning the health history as the American people, or any people for that matter, to say that, hey, this individual already suffered from rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, so other autoimmune disorders, and that this increased their risk of Guillain-Barré, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that'll put it in perspective for me of, hey, maybe because this person already had an autoimmune disorder, this vaccine was not good for them because they already had a compromised system that was already waging an attack on itself, because that is what autoimmune disorders do. I'm not saying that that is the particular case in this situation, but we know individuals with autoimmune disorders can potentially have a cytokine storm, or I'm trying to describe this easily, a situation of where instead of their antibodies working to protect their body, their antibodies are treated as enemies, and the body starts to attack itself because it doesn't recognize that the vaccine or the foreign mechanism is there to protect them. Instead, it starts hurting the body instead of helping the body. These are things that happen to individuals even without the vaccine. So the issue that I have is that, yes, there are issues with vaccines, but there isn't enough being done so that way individuals can compare notes to say, oh, well, I'm this age as this person. I had this disorder just like this person. I have a similar health history, because no two people are the same. But if we can actually look to see what the health history looks like of these individuals, then we can compare notes to find out if we may end up with that syndrome later on.
Yeah.
Is it a situation of where we're in the clear? It raises a lot of skepticism, and unfortunately, for individuals that have now taken the J&J vaccine, I'm sure that they're now stressed. I'm sure that a lot of individuals are stressed.
I'm stressed because, I have some people very close to me who've taken it. I've got about 30 seconds. So is there anything that they should be doing right now? 30 seconds.
The one thing I'm always going to emphasize to anyone is, if you were not vigilant about staying up on your preventative health before, it is important that you do so now.
Okay.
This is whether you have taken the vaccine or not. We know that COVID is among us. We know that COVID is causing issues in our bodies. It's affecting different organs. So it is important that you have a primary care provider, and that when things don't feel right, when things don't seem right, even if it is just a part of aging, make sure that you're following up.
Dr. Shanina Knighton, everybody, Case Western Reserve University, resident scholar, and registered nurse and PhD infection preventionist. She'll be back with us tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about Haiti coming up on the Santita Jackson Show. The story is much more complex than you know. Back in just a minute. Okay, very quickly, Dr. Knighton, before I move on to this next topic, this morning, I've got the people from Texas who've run away. They're gonna be coming onto the show, so I've had to move things around. But oh, boy, wow, that's a caution. Medi has said she says I have an autoimmune disorder. What are the remedy for the? Well, are there any remedies for the side effects? Preventive remedies?
So that's the thing. I would still, just how I've been talking about before, about boosting T cells and making sure you get some ginger and some lemon and foods that are going to boost your T cells.
Mm-hmm.
Staying away from the preservatives and the food additives. Right now, like diet, exercise, not smoking are the best ways to like mitigate some of the effects that are associated with COVID, or even, let's say, potentially the vaccine, which again, we still don't know. But we have to refer back to our diet right now, even if we can't do anything else.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. We're going to do when I get back, if I get away, because now I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to France. I'm going to have to find that out a little bit later today.
And listen to this. I hear somebody's birthday coming up.
Girl, come on. It's on Saturday. Thank you.
Too.
No.
Mine too.
When's your
I'm
birthday?
A as well.
When's your
7/21.
Are you serious? I knew I liked
Yes.
you for a reason. Come on, girl.
See?
Come on. Come on.
I said the same thing. That made me smile.
What's going on? We're almost Leos. Almost.
But not quite. But we didn't make it.
Didn't make it.
And I'm happy.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Oh, I'm good. I'm good over here on the Kansas side. You love it. So, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. But happy birthday, girl. But if I'm here, I'll certainly speak to you because if you have WhatsApp, absolutely. I can call you for free from overseas. If you don't have WhatsApp, then you just have to wait till I get home. Save my coins.
That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
All my friends who are overseas, they call my WhatsApp blows up, and it took me a while to really get adjusted to, because they come up oftentimes as visual calls, and it's just like, whoa, what is this? And I don't like WhatsApp for a minute, but I have too many friends who are out of the country not to have it, and they use it. They're like, it's more secure anyway. I'm like, honey, none of the stuff is secure. Let it go. Whatever.
Yeah.
None of it.
To make sure I think I had it. I just need to reinstall it. So I'll make sure I get it back on my phone.
Go put it back on, because you're in a space where the work that you do is international. So you need to go on and do that anyway. So I'm sending you much love. Sure. I'm going to bring up, I think I have Kim Ives with me now. Kim Ives, are you there?
I am indeed.
It's wonderful hearing your voice. And, I'm letting Dr. Shanina Knighton go, but you should know she's a brilliant scholar from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. And she's a registered nurse, PhD, and she's an infection preventionist. There are only about 16,000 in the world for us 7 billion people. And she really helps us every day, along with Dr. Deborah Holden, one of the world's preeminent epidemiologists at Michigan State. She's had to take some time away. But between the two of them, we've learned a whole lot about our bodies and what we need to be doing to help protect ourselves, in particular, in this time of pandemic. So, love you, Dr. Shanina Knighton, and happy birthday.
I love you too. Enjoy the show.
Thanks.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. At the top of the hour, we'll be talking with John Nichols, and later on with Jackson, runaway Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, and Texas County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. Why have they run away? What is going on? And And what's happening in Texas is happening all over the country, protecting our voting rights, everybody. As we come up on the first anniversary of the passing of John Lewis, are we going to get the act named in his honor to restore our voting rights, to protect them? Will we do that? But right now, let's talk about Haiti. And why should we talk about Haiti? Why this little island nation is the first nation to for the lower classes to overthrow, I mean slaves at that, to overthrow colonial power. That had never happened in world history. And it seems to me that they have paid the price over and over and over and over again. But, just as colonial powers do, they always leave you a little gift that keeps on giving. India becomes Pakistan and India, and they start chopping it up. So people start fighting amongst themselves. And we've kind of seen that in Haiti, where you have these different classes. Some classes protect the colonial powers, others fight those powers. And so we wanted to go to Kim Ives, who's done so much work in Haiti and helping us to understand the global significance of this nation, that really showed us the way, pointed us toward liberty. It's only the second nation in this hemisphere to become a republic. Yeah. Oh, I mean, 28 years after the United States. It's the second nation. The second nation. It is a nation of tremendous significance historically and currently. And so, of course, the English language editor of Haiti Liberty, which is a fabulous, fabulous publication, is going to talk to us about what is going on in Haiti and why is it of import to us. Kim Ives, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Santita. It's such an honor to be interviewed by you.
Oh, look, I'm honored to be able to speak with you. It seems every day, and it's interesting that this assassination of President Moise and the near assassination of First Lady Martine Moise is in the headlines. Uh, why is this nationally significant? Why is this globally significant?
Well, Haiti, as you say, is one of history's towering countries. Despite its small size of 11 million, it was the first free nation, we can really say, in this hemisphere, because let's face it, the U.S. was founded by slave owners, not self-freed slaves. And Haiti really was the touchstone for the revolutions that swept South America. It was Haiti, again, that gave Bolivar his guns and boats and even soldiers to free the continent. And if you look in the flags of all the northern South American nations, you'll see the Haitian flag in it, the red and blue. The yellow is for the Bolivarian forces. But right now, Haiti is paying the price, as it has for its entire history, for its temerity, for its boldness in fighting for freedom, and is enduring a very bitter class war, as you say. The assassinated president was at odds, was fighting with Haiti's bourgeoisie, the groups that own Haiti's ports and factories and depots, food depots and land, and they got him. They managed to put together a cabal of mercenaries hired out of Florida and send them down to Haiti, basically keep them in a place not too far from where he was killed for several months, 2-3 months. And then on last Wednesday, they pulled the trigger and they sent him up the hill, and they went in and they machine gunned him at close range. It's a horrible crime, and the Haitian people are indignant, outraged at how it was carried out, even though many of them were demonstrating against him because, in a sense, his collusion with the U.S. in a war against Venezuela, which had provided Haiti with cheap oil and cheap credit for a decade. And this was one of the reasons that he ended up at odds with them, because after Venezuela's exemplary solidarity to Haiti, of giving them some $2 billion worth of oil revenue funds, which was basically embezzled by Jovenel's mentor, Michel Martelly and company. They ended up in a problem with the IMF and others, and they didn't have money. And that was where the fight between Jovenel and the bourgeoisie, who had originally supported him, ended up going off the rails. So that's what we're seeing is the terrible train wreck, which has resulted after there was a division between Jovenel and that ruling group.
We're speaking with Kim Ives, the English language editor of Haiti Liberty in American English. And we're talking about what's happening in Haiti and why it is so significant and all the things that we're finding out in the U.S. links, if you will, to the assassination of this president. It's been devastating to the nation to have their president assassinated, to have their first lady nearly assassinated. It's just been devastating. Although he's had political opposition, apparently he was also making some very progressive reforms internally. And you, of course, have this persistent bourgeoisie, and it's, you have, it's colorist, because these are really the children of the colonizers and their descendants, kind of put in place, Kim Ives, in between the dark-skinned Haitians, the people, the masses of the people, and the Western network, and they've done their bidding. Do I have it right?
Well, yes. I mean,
because in the United States, we see this, and when you see it throughout the colonial world, when you get to, particularly when you get to the darker countries, and you see,
right.
You can spot it, immediately, because we did it in the United States too.
Well, yes, of course, and yes, you're right in the sense that many of the bourgeoisie, if not most, are either the children of the colonizers, that is, the French colonists, who would often rape the African slave women, and the result were mulatto children who ended up becoming freed because they had their father was the slave master, and so that class became known as the class that was the assassins of the country's founding father, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. But it's a half truth in a way, Santita, because there were in fact former black slaves who were also part of that, and they also became part of Haiti's ruling class. And this is part of the problem and complexity of Haitian society, is that you have two ruling classes. You have a comprador bourgeoisie and the import-export bourgeoisie, which generally is derived from what they call the affranchis, the freedmen, who those children were part of. Those half slave master, half slave children were part of. But also there are the grandons, the big landowners, who were based largely in the north during that original colonial struggle, and who were often black and used that in a way as a disguise. This was behind the Duvalier dictatorship. He used black power as a kind of a bludgeon against this, what is called by U.S. theorists, the mulatto elite. And in addition, I should say that the class of the bourgeois class now has many refugees from the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire a century ago, when the First World War was happening, and many of them who were from Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, that area, ended up in the Caribbean and in Haiti, and ended up becoming a big bourgeoisie. So it's sometimes seen as even a fight against the Arabs. And, so this is, in a way, this mosaic of race and nationality is sometimes used to disguise what is essentially a class struggle, because, as I say, the ruling class of Haiti has really all races in it, even though the lighter skin dominate.
Oh, look, I just brought that in because you see it all over the world, and much of what they do all over the world was based upon what was started here in the United States. That's, our black colleges were created by slave masters for their children, and you had to have a paper bag test, Kim Ives, in order to get in back in the day. So it's a real issue. But where are we going? I mean, and I also want to know just where's Taiwan in all of this? We see a lot of the alleged assassins were at the Taiwanese embassy, and President Moise was in conflict with the Chinese because he recognized Taiwan. So how are they mixed up in this, or has that been determined yet?
Haiti remains one of the only 16 nations which recognize Taiwan as a country. Most countries of the world accept mainland China's claim to Taiwan. It was always part of China and was only sort of colonized, we could say, by the U.S. after the Chinese Revolution in 1949, and Chiang Kai-shek and his forces, who were fighting Mao Zedong's liberating army, and they set up Taiwan as what could I say, a sort of an Israel, if you will, over there, defended by the U.S. gunboats, and so Taiwan has had to maintain. That all changed in 1971 when Nixon went and recognized mainland China as China, as the representative of the Chinese people, and so China has been very jealous in holding on to Haiti as one of the few countries with a population over 2 million people, which recognizes it. Most of the countries that recognize it are small countries with, 100,000, 200,000 person population. So, yes, Jovenel had remained in the Chinese, in the Taiwanese supporting camp. And so I think in some ways, I'm not sure why they ended up going there. We're not exactly clear how they chose the Taiwanese embassy. But this is likely to become a very big issue in the case of Haiti because with the tensions and even, we could say, Cold War, which has now been launched against China by the U.S., the role of Taiwan is going to loom larger and larger. And I don't know how it, in the end, is involved in this assassination or why they went there. Maybe Taiwan gave some of the money for this in some way. I'd be very surprised by that, but somehow somebody thought that they'd find safe haven at the Taiwanese embassy, even though it's even a questionable embassy in that most countries of the world do not recognize it as an independent nation.
Indeed, they went en masse. I mean, it was like, 11 of them who were there?
I think it was 17
okay.
that ended up in there. So, but yeah, they're all in the hands of Haitian authorities now.
Unbelievable. We're talking with Kim Ives about what is happening in Haiti. I mean, and where are we? What is now this interim government who would have been at odds with Moise, with President Moise? Now they're calling for the United States to come in. What does that mean?
In fact, they're not. In fact, the guy who's there, this Joseph Claude Joseph, who's the acting prime minister. He had, in fact, been replaced by Dr. Ariel Henry 2 days prior to the assassination. I know this may be kind of confusing for listeners. So Dr. Ariel Henry says he's the one who should be running the show now as prime minister. But Dr. Claude Joseph remained on because Ariel Henry had not been sort of formally installed. So he is emerging, Dr. Claude Joseph is sort of the defender, or at least he's posing as the defender of the legacy of Jovenel Moïse, for whom the Haitian people have a sort of posthumous sympathy, if you will, because of the dastardly way in which he was assassinated. So there is now a sort of pile-on by the opposition and a lot of other sectors behind Dr. Ariel Henry, and now a guy who's been appointed as the interim president, who is Joseph Lambert. There are 10 senators, and 9 of them voted him to be the provisional president. They're the only elected people in the country right now, so they claim to have that as the reason they have the authority to do that. So Henry and Lambert are basically making common cause against Claude Joseph. And definitely this is going to be the next battle. I don't know which side is going to arrest or kill the other, but that's definitely coming down the road because there's a real struggle for power now.
What are the natural resources in Haiti? Because it seems that whenever, there's some kind of disaster like the earthquake, 10, 11 years ago, there is it seems that the United States, the French, the IMF, all of these Western powers are very keen on Haiti, on keeping a toehold in Haiti. Why is that? Is it gold up in them hills, since they had to pay the French in gold bullion for their own freedom, reparations?
Right.
I said, not paper money. Right. What is it about Haiti that keeps the French and the United States holding on?
Well, gold was the original thing that attracted the Europeans. When Columbus landed, the Native Americans, the Arawaks, who greeted him on the shore, had a lot of gold, and of course that's what the Spanish were looking for. And they came and mined most of it within the first century of colonial colonization, of the European colonization of what was the island of Haiti. That's Arawak for mountainous country. The entire island, including the Dominican Republic, was called Haiti by the Arawaks. So most of the gold was gone, but there is believed to be now some $2 billion worth of gold in the mountains of Haiti, in the small little veins that remain. But the way you got to get to those is to blow up the whole mountaintop and then sluice it all with cyanide, and you get the little dust that comes out, and that's how you get your $2 billion worth of gold. I mean, let's remember, gold is $1,600 an ounce. So we're not talking about tons of gold, but it is enough to make $2 billion. So or is it 20? Excuse me. I think I'm confusing my numbers. I think it's 20 billion they're saying is in the mountains. So this is one thing, but a lot of people have said, even President Aristide has said to me, that there's uranium in the hills, and there's been a lot of stories that the uranium of the North was what was really coveted by countries like the United States, and that they even carted some of it off in dump trucks. This is according to one of the people who they're holding in Jovenel's assassination, this Dr. Christian Emmanuel Sanon. He has a video online. People may have seen it, where he's saying he saw them stealing Haiti's uranium. So there are also claims that Haiti sits on a great deal of oil. I am not too sure about that. That's never really been confirmed by the oil companies. But I think also, above all, Santita, it is its geopolitical positioning. It sits on the Windward Passage, right next to Cuba, right next to the Dominican Republic. And as we know, this is an extremely strategic and important region for the United States, especially, to dominate that area. And so they want to keep Haiti and the revolutionary fires that are constantly either burning or smoldering there in check.
Many wants to know, just very quickly, what's the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic?
Oh, that's always been shall we say, a fraught relationship. Mm-hmm. Haiti was the first nation founded by self-freed slaves. The Dominican Republic has the distinction of being the only country that has chosen to go back into colonial status. The Haitians freed the whole island. In fact, for about 40 years, they governed both sides of the island, but the Dominicans rallied and drove out the Haitians back in the mid-19th century, and in fact their independence is proclaimed from Haiti. But big picture is, so it's a very complicated relationship, and the two people have a lot of fraternal links, but there have also been a lot of campaigns in the Dominican Republic, which became some kind of almost greater neo-colony than Haiti was. Haiti always was resisting, but the Dominican Republic sort of embraced a lot of things of the United States, such as baseball. Haiti has never embraced baseball. Mm-hmm. And so there's often campaigns in the Dominican Republic against Haitians who go there to work. Much of the Dominican working class is Haitian. And so there anti-Haitian campaigns, which also double as anti-African campaigns, anti-Black campaigns. Mm-hmm. So it's very complex and fraught, but at the end of the day, Haitians helped fight with Dominicans against the U.S. invasion in 1965, and Haiti was, as I say, a liberator originally of the Dominican, of that eastern half of the island, what the Arawaks called Haiti, and I think many Dominicans also recognize that important role.
Kim Ives, English language editor of Haiti Liberté. I mean, thank you so much for helping us to unpack some of this, but you're going to have to come back because it's very complex.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin, that wonderful movie. It is complicated. It is really complicated. Real time. It's hard to really find out. But you're helping us to really understand the history. And if we understand the history, we can understand, where we were. We can understand where we are going forward. And I want to thank you for helping to give me some clarity, because, boy, I've needed it. Because I've been trying to find out about this. And when you found out about the horrific way in which he was assassinated, it just, it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking for the people. And so we pray for the people of Haiti today, wherever they are politically. We never want the leader of any nation to be killed. It's devastating to everybody. It's devastating to everybody. Coming up, what's happening in Texas, everybody? Kim Ives, thank you for being with us on the Santita Jackson Show. Back talking about Texas, 773-763-9278. Want to hear your thoughts on these runaway state representatives. Back in a minute. Kim Ives? Kim
I'm gonna
Ives?
go call John Nichols.
Oh, okay. Is Mr. Ives there or did he leave?
Oh, he just dropped.
Oh, okay, good.
He dropped.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh boy. Ooh, ooh. Okay. All right, everybody. It's complicated in Haiti, huh? And we're going to keep our eyes peeled and we're going to find out what's going on in Cuba, too. Think about those places because my grandmother was a migrant worker, South Florida. And back in the 30s and the 40s and before, the borders were porous. Florida really changed when you got Disney World down there. Before that, it was really backwater. And I don't say that in an insulting way. It was just not developed. It was a place where Black people and indigenous people, Black people who were escaping slavery, were able to be absorbed in many ways by the Osceola Nation, these First Nation peoples. It's a very interesting state. It's a very interesting history. And this particular iteration of Florida that we're seeing now is really has been shaped by the right wingers who came from Cuba. So that's interesting. But it's that part of the world has always fascinated me because my grandmother spent so much time there. She was a migrant worker, so she, chopped the sugar cane and all of that when she was in Cuba and throughout the Caribbean when she was a little girl and in her youth. So I'm always
John
looking.
Nichols is here.
John Nichols, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Oh boy, got a lot going on. I talked to a lot of people from Texas last night.
Oh,
Lots
yeah.
lots and lots and lots. So thank you so much for bearing with us and moving your time today because
Oh, that's okay.
it is well, I mean it's perfect because you're doing the perfect handoff to them.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just get to a place where I can speak a little louder.
Oh, okay. Although it sounds great, but okay.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, some people are still sleeping.
Oh no, I understand that.
Yeah. All right. So how are you?
I am doing well. I'm doing well, and you can say hello to
Good,
everybody on
good.
Facebook. Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm doing well. Dad
talking to
is on his way to France. I'm going to see if I'm going to still be able to go since I've not had the shots. He
Yeah, I know.
is.
We were just talking about that yesterday. He is.
Mhm. Oh, you spoke with him.
Quite. Yeah. We talked quite a
Great.
bit yesterday afternoon, and he seemed to be quite enthusiastic
He's
about
very
the
excited.
trip to France.
He ought to be.
Great.
Oh yeah, it's the highest reward that they give. It's one of the rarest ones in the world, and they've been most generous to him.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I think it's incredible,
Mhm.
and you don't know that you'll be able to go, which is too bad.
Well, no, we'll see. I'm not claiming it yet. But he called me last night and I heard my mother barking in the background. I said, "Hey." Well, she said she's prepared to go and blah 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 blah. He said it might be difficult because Macron instituted more restrictions, but they're really supposed to start. They're supposed to become effective in August 1st. So I'm going to find out today. We're going to talk, and if I can go, I can go. But I'm not going to get a shot. So
cool.
Well, it would be great, but I'm not going to get a shot just to go to France.
No, I don't think it would even. The timing and such. I don't think it would have an effect anyway.
If we were a month away, no.
Right. Exactly.
They need They just need to come through the clinical trials because you see what's happening with the J&J jab. Different. I'm very vigilant about my health, and maybe because in 2004 I was very ill, and so it's made me look at things. And then on top of it, I mean, there was no one closer to me than my friend Candace, and she just died a week ago today. It's been devastating. It's just devastating. Devastating. This is someone who I talk to like 2 or 3 times a day. Just about every day.
Oh my gosh.
And it's devastating. But people have all kinds of health issues. And it seems that these shots kind of bring to fore whatever might be lurking in the background for you. I mean,
shocking when you think about it. Yeah.
It's not, but what's sad is that we can't talk about it. So you can know what you should be looking out for. You know what I'm saying? The fact that we can't talk.
I have to say, I got the shot.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Moderna, and it was very good. I mean, it did. I had no effects one way or the other, except positive.
Well, see,
so
I know some people who've gotten very
I had a good
sick.
experience.
I've known some people close to me who've gotten very, very sick. You know what? That's what happens with shots. That can happen with medicine. Hey, people need to understand.
That's true.
Your ibuprofen, your aspirin can give you it can have an effect.
That's true.
Let's get through this particular period so that I can see what's what, and I can say, okay, I need to get that vaccine. That's the one I need.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, I hope you do, and I want you to get it. I want you to get something good, because I do think at the end of the day that this is going to turn out to be our way out of this, and the way that we get to a point where
that and ivermectin and hydrochloroquine and these other therapeutics, they need to be honest. The vaccine is not the only thing that's going to get us out of it. It's just like Tamiflu. You take that for the flu. We need to be able to have the full spectrum of treatments. So, because if you get it, what do you do about it? And what are you doing to bolster your baseline health in the first place? See, that for me that's a real issue, because one of the things that we found out in this whole period, John, is that Americans are not doing well physically. We're not.
Well, I think that's a deep and fundamental reality is that our health, our preventative health care, just doing the basics of what we need to do to keep ourselves in good shape, and all of that has been neglected as a country. And that's one of the reasons why I'm such a huge backer of a single payer Medicare for all.
Me too. And I think we should be fighting for that right now, John. John, we need to be fighting for that. We need to be pushing for that right now, because that's what we need right now. I mean,
it is, and it gives people so many more options if you've got good preventative care, right?
Yeah. Stay right there. Ooh.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. It is my home, as is AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, my family to the north. Thank you, Gary Hines of Sounds of Blackness, for letting us use your magnificent music. I want you to call me or text me, 773-763-9773, 763-763-WCPT. GWC Injury Lawyers will give you the opportunity to text. Also to 773-763-9278. Let's talk about Texas. What's going on? Why have had these state representatives had to escape so that they could avoid a quorum, so that they could really they're trying to keep our voting rights together. They're trying to keep our voting rights. What's going on there? What's going on? And what's happening in Texas? What's happening in Washington? What's happening? John Nichols is going to help us to unpack it, as will Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, who is a runaway right now. The governor's threatening to arrest him and his colleagues for being away. Wow, everybody. So we got a lot to talk about. We've got to talk about this, about our voting rights with John Nichols of the Nation magazine. So let me get a few of these headlines out the way so we can get to John Nichols, everybody. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 78 degrees today, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 126 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 31 points. The S&P 500 closed up 15. Of course, Major League Baseball is on that all-star break. They had the home run derby yesterday. Don't you love it? And then, of course, we're going to be picking up with the NBA World Championships in another day. Everybody, the coronavirus, Americans are having to make a decision about which jab to take, getting vaccinated or actually following through on safety precautions like masking and social distancing. That is still the order of the day, everybody, according to this CNN report. That choice is playing out elsewhere as COVAX, the global vaccine sharing initiative, signed deals with two Chinese pharmaceutical companies for more than 500 million COVID-19 vaccines by the first half of next year to try and combat the spreading Delta variant in Seoul, South Korea. The health ministry has implemented an unusual restriction: no fast music in the gymnasia. Why? Because they want to keep you from breathing rapidly and deeply and spreading the virus. Wow, wow, wow. So what about the increased risk of neurological complications, the Guillain-Barré syndrome that is now tied to the J&J vaccine? We'll be hearing more about that in coming days, everybody. Calls for a bolder Congress follow TexasDems exodus to thwart GOP anti-voter bills. Let's get right to it, John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. They are running away. They are running away. The Texans are running away, trying to save our voting rights. 48 states have nearly 400 pieces of legislation. It might even be more now. That was that was last night when I checked, but that could be changing right now. They are looking to restrict your voting rights. And Texas' problem is our problem all around the country. Why? Because this is happening in 48 states, and you do not want to get to the polls in 2020, which is now. Nina Turner is on the ballot in Ohio in a couple of months. She's running for a congressional seat right now. You don't want to get to the polling station and find out, I've been purged. You don't want to get to the polling station and find that it's closed, and there's only one polling station for you and your community, as we saw in Kentucky during the Senate race last year. 660,000 people had one precinct, one where they could go vote. So, John Nichols, there is just there's a lot going on. I mean, indeed, President Trump said, look, if we don't restrict the voting rights, Republicans will never win. I mean, Dave Daley shows us that the 50-50 split in the Senate, help me out with this, John, is not really even. The 50 U.S. Democratic senators represent more than 41 million more voters than the Republicans.
That's right.
Okay, talk to me now.
Well, I mean, look, we've got a democracy deficit in America. And, you know, many of our politicians talk all the time about deficits, right? They've got, you don't have enough money here, you don't have enough budgeted there. And that's a legitimate conversation, an important one to have. But we ought to also talk about other kinds of deficits. And if we have a democratic republic, if we've got a country that runs on the basis of the will of the people, ideally, that's what it should, we have to look at where our deficits are. And we've got a severe one, and it's getting worse. Here's the problem. Number one, going back to the founding of the country, remember, we didn't let most people vote. This country was founded in, the late 18th century at a time when white male property holders were allowed to vote. That's rich white guys. And everybody else was denied the franchise, or at least overwhelmingly so. Of course, slaves were denied the franchise. Indentured servants were denied the franchise. Women were denied the franchise. People of color, of any background, any ethnicity, were denied the franchise. And notably, you even had cases in some states where so-called religious dissenters, people who didn't follow a mainstream Protestant religion, they too were denied the franchise. So we started as a country that didn't let most people vote. Over 200. A lot of fight, a lot of struggle, a lot of pain. We got to a point where we had expanded the franchise substantially, to a point where most people could vote. But now, tragically, in the last 40-some years, and especially in the last couple of years, we've seen a real effort to make it harder to vote. And that has exploded now. It's coming at us in every direction. There are clearly folks, Republican legislators in states across this country, who want to make it hard for tens of millions of Americans to cast ballots. And we know why they want to do that. They've been open about it. Not always, but we've heard the tapes of legislators saying, if we can put this rule in, this barrier in, this blockade in, it's going to be easier for us to win. And so that's what they're doing. They are literally erecting barriers to voting. We're seeing it big time in Texas. seen it in Georgia. But the fact is, it's happening everywhere across this country. Every place where there's a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, some places where there's a mixed legislature and governor, you're seeing situations where all sorts of new barriers to voting are being erected. And Santita, here's the really important one, and what I think President Biden will hopefully discuss today. Not only are we seeing barriers to voting being erected, we're seeing new barriers to counting votes being erected. And that's a big deal. It's the next stage of this thing. So let's say even people, you struggle, you work as hard, you get over these barriers, you get yourself to the polls, you cast that ballot. Well, now in Texas, in some of this legislation they put forward, they have created a situation where it would be dramatically easier to throw out the results of an election, not on the basis of facts, not on the basis of, proven problems with an election, but simply on the basis of charges and claims and estimates. They're lowering the threshold. They're literally stopping the count and throwing out an election result. And so we're in a very tenuous place right now. And President Biden will go to Philadelphia this afternoon to give what may be the most important speech of this early stage of his presidency, and that is a speech about the state of American democracy and what needs to be done to protect.
What do you expect him? Well, what we expect him to say and what we need him to say could be two different things.
Yeah.
What does he need to say? I mean, because with all of this experience in the Senate, he knows the impact of the filibuster, and he knows what can be done about it. I mean, because there's some basic things that could happen, like right now, that could really be that could be game changers for the People Act, for the voting rights, for John Lewis's work, this monument to his lifelong quest for us to secure the right to vote. What should he say, and what should we be listening out for, John Nichols?
So let's start with what he should say, and then we'll discuss a little bit what may be the case, that he may not say everything he should. What he should say, and you went right to the heart of the matter, is that there are some issues that must be supreme. Some issues must stand above the fray politics, i.e., they can't be stalled out by politicians seeking to gain an advantage in a particular election. And what that means is that, at least on this issue, I happen to think it more broadly, but at least on this issue, the president should say that the filibuster should be scrapped. The filibuster should be put aside. Because when we're talking about saving American democracy, you can't say, okay, you've got to get 60% support for majority rule, right? Majority rule is with 50+1. But to protect majority rule under the Senate rules, you got to get to 60%. That's absurd. That's creating an artificial barrier to taking the basic steps to defend one person, one vote in America. And so the President of the United States should say, in this specific circumstance, again, I support broader filibuster reform, but even if you're not a fan of filibuster reform, you should be able to say, in this specific circumstance, it just simply has to be scrapped. It cannot be followed, because if you follow it here, then it allows a minority, a small minority, quite frankly, to effectively prevent a defense of democracy. And the time is short. That's the other thing the president needs to say, and I think he will say this. I fear he will not mention the filibuster, or at least not make a call for scrapping it. I'm sorry if he doesn't do that. I think that's problematic. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does do it. But the other thing that he needs to say, and I think he will say today, is that the window is almost closed. This is a very narrow time space in which to act. And that's something people need to understand. I think we're so used to politics dragging out over long periods of time, and the push and pull of Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and all these different players, making their demands and getting in the way of things, stalling things out, members of the Senate taking long breaks, things like that. Well, we've got to put all that aside and understand that in a matter of weeks, the census data will come through. once that data comes through, and it's delayed already, but once it comes through, you're going to see legislatures across this country begin to draw new district maps for congressional seats and for legislative seats. Municipalities will be doing it down in the city council level, county boards, things like that. But all the new maps are going to be drawn. This is a vital part of democracy. It's where we actually make real the promise of one person, one vote. Because if you draw fair maps, if you draw fair districts, then you have real elections where it's a serious competition. And the threat of gerrymandering is so real and so overwhelming, especially in states like Georgia, states like Texas, but also states like my own home state of Wisconsin, and a lot of other places across this country, that if reforms are not put through now in the form of the For the People Act, which has, efforts to really address some of the warping of the process, if they're not put through now, those gerrymandered maps will be done. They will be put in place for 2022. And I can tell you that if the Republican schemes for gerrymandering go through as they seek to do them, there is a very real chance, even a probability, if they achieve all that they're trying to do, that the House of Representatives will be lost to the Democrats.
Well, isn't that
that's a fundamental shift?
Well, it is a fundamental shift, and so shouldn't there be an absolute push on the filibuster right now, just for the voting rights? I mean, I don't think that we should give the president or anyone space on that. Chuck Schumer, anybody.
I agree.
But I mean, it's just I think that ought to be a demand of the 41 million plus people who are represented by these 50 U.S. Democratic senators. I mean, there's some things that we need. Look, we have healthcare on the line. We've got infrastructure on the line. There's so much that's on the line that if we do not get our voting rights protected, we're not going to be able to get anything enacted, John.
You're exactly right on that. The only thing I correct is you're saying 41 million. Just to emphasize, it's 41 million more Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, excuse me. No, let me be very specific, because there's 41 million more. Excuse me, that John, because David Daley says it every week on the show. 41.5 million more represented by 50 Democratic senators. And so my question is this: why not push on the filibuster? And you know what? Why are we not marching on Washington right now or on our state capitals? Come on. What's the call to action here?
For a long time.
What's the call to action?
This is the call to action.
Okay.
And the call to action was issued more than 50 years ago by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., back in the days when your father was working with him as a very young pastor. And Dr. King understood the power of the filibuster. He had to deal with it throughout his time as a civil rights activist. In 1957, when the first major civil rights bill since the Civil War was moving in the U.S. Senate, by the way, being moved in that case by liberal Republicans in some cases, it was being filibustered by Southern segregationists like Strom Thurmond. And the threat of the filibuster, which had been used against the 1957 bill, against the bill in 1960, against a series of civil rights bills in the late 50s, early 60s, was so daunting that Dr. King, in 1964, when the Civil Rights Act and then from that the Voting Rights Act were coming into play, he went to Washington and he basically, camped out there. He made himself a physical presence in the Senate, and he gave interviews on national television, and he said, at this point in our history, when we have had a march on Washington, and when we have had horrible incidents in the South, the church bombings and the attacks on civil rights activists, when all of this is known, when the country is at such a tense and pivotal point, if the filibuster is deployed, then people are going to need to go to the streets, right? They're going to need to deliver a powerful message to those in Congress that they won't let civil rights and voting rights be blocked by the filibuster. And that was more than 50 years ago, 56 years ago, that Dr. King, 57 even, that Dr. King was saying, look, the proper response to this is nonviolent civil disobedience that challenges those in power to make real the promise of democracy. And so I think we need to pick that up again today. I am happy that the Texas legislators are flying to Washington. I think this is a mobilizing moment, a mobilizing message. My sense is that this has to be amplified in all sorts of ways, and it has to be amplified about the filibuster. We have to not simply get lost in the frustration of Democrat versus Republican. We must understand that in some cases, Democratic acceptance of rules that block action makes the Republican victory possible. And so this has to be a more pointed critique. It has to be a more aggressive critique. And if President Biden, who I think will deliver an very important speech today, if he does not close that circle by calling for getting rid of the filibuster, then I do think that the people have a duty to step up and say to their leaders, if you will not lead, we will. And this is one of those moments where I think that action becomes very, very vital because, again, that window is closing quickly.
Don't we need to lead them? Because when we look at,
right.
the great movements in our country, we've moved the legislators. Legislators aren't liberators. That's not what they do. We forget that we hired them. We don't work for them. They work for us. He's supposed to do what we hired him to do. He campaigned because he wanted a job, and we had to figure out whether we were going to hire him or Donald Trump. We chose him. So now, what we need him to do, right? That's not the point. My point is, now that you're there, I'm just saying, now that you're there, there's something that we did. John, when I look at 48 states,
I know.
I mean,
I know.
come on. This our last 2 minutes. Where do we go from here? What can we do?
You have said it well, and you've summed it up. It is that we have to lead. We'll listen to the president's speech today. That's the first thing we have to do. The President of the United States is going to Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was written. He is going to give us a speech on voting rights and on their connection to democracy. We should hear what he says. If what he says is sufficient, then we should rally to make it so. If it is insufficient, we should up the pressure to take those additional steps. At the end of the day, the call is made by members of the Senate. They decide whether they will advance this legislation without the filibuster. If they will do so, then it can move and the final steps can be taken to pass this. The fact of the matter is, we have so many things on the table: infrastructure, 100 other pieces of legislation that desperately need to be done. But at the end of the day, this ought to be our summer focus. We ought to make this a freedom summer. And if we are to make it a freedom summer, then our goal cannot be a narrowly defined or ill-defined goal. It must be a clear goal. That is to scrap the filibuster and move forward in passing the For the People Act, which will address gerrymandering, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that will restore many of the broken and undermined components of the Voting Rights Act. So we know exactly what needs to be done, and I think we should deliver that message.
Today, everybody watch out for President Biden's speech. We'll be going over it tomorrow. John, I'm going to have to pull you back in tomorrow so you can tell me, okay, we talked about you gave me the forecast. Now, tomorrow, I want to get on the other side of it. What was said, and what do we need to do? We have the power, everybody. We have the power. Going to be talking with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in just a few minutes. Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. He's on the run, and Congresswoman Jackson Lee is helping him to do it. We love it, as is Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who has experience with this before, because he did this almost 20 years ago. They've done this before, and the governor's threatening to arrest them. Wow, this is a lot. But Texas is on point, everybody, helping us to look at our voting rights. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Everybody like and share on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and WCPT 820. Back in just a few minutes. John, thank you so much for being with us today.
Say it again. I had you off. Commissioner Ellis is here as well.
Okay.
State Rep Ron Reynolds. You said it's
He's
mobile, right?
he's gonna call at 8 at 7.
Reynolds and then
And Congressman Jackson Lee will be calling in also.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Commissioner Ellis. Okay, Dylan.
He'll be here.
Good morning, sister.
Hey.
I'm doing fine, and I may call your mother or your dad and say, if I decide to stay up here and help my colleagues on the run,
Right.
I don't want to pay this hotel tab another day. But I'm supposed to fly out today. I did go meet them at the hotel when they got in last night, and I'll probably try to go by and say hello on my way to the airport, or if I can get a later flight, I'll do it.
Well, they need your guidance though. Well, they're cutting everything down. You know, it was hard for me to get out of LA on Sunday. It was like,
oh yeah, you switch your flight, and then if you like me, flying with a ski mask, and I'll so I can be the last one on plane and the first one off.
Two.
You know, I have 4 disabilities. I told you about that, didn't I? 4 disabilities.
What?
I'm old. I'm black. I'm overweight. And I'm in politics. So I got 4 challenges in life.
The overweight piece, don't even listen to him, everybody. And the old, he's got Johnny bike. Johnny biked 75 miles the other day.
I am so proud of him. And I'm heartbroken that the date changed because I was going over to Paris for you.
Yes.
Reverend Jackson, your father, to get the award, but they moved it to Monday, and our court meeting is on Tuesday. And the last thing I need is for my detractors to say he's over there running around the Champs-Élysées and with some Versailles Palace and zooming in to the meeting. And then they'll say his friends are in exile at the nation's capital. He ought to be here doing his work, getting rolled over by these mean-spirited vote suppressors. I traded in miles to get my ticket to Paris, but I had to cancel it. So I have 1 year to go back to Paris. And we don't think how to go together.
That makes me sad. Sad.
But it's a special occasion.
It is.
Jackson.
It
and
is.
Your family will be honored for your work on civil rights.
Well, certainly for his work, and I would say his and my mother's work. We just try to help support them.
Y'all help now. Hey, you all help. Put it this way: when they were attacking him, he just felt your parents felt the body blow, but all of you all were getting hit, whether you knew it or not.
Oh, well,
you were too young to know it, but you were getting shot at too.
We knew that, but I think in that position, you're so busy trying to protect your parents, because that's what happened in my Harvard interview. Those were hits that I was taking, because of my father's politics. But I was so offended that they would attack my father and his politics and my mother's politics and their work, that I didn't even think about me. It was like, this is so insulting. What? But God is good.
I remember when I ran for office 38 years ago as Nikki Leland's chief of staff. He had a great line when I was asking for his endorsement. He said, well, Rodney, you get all of my enemies and some of my friends. So, you get all of your daddy's enemies.
All of them.
Every one of Reverend Jackson's enemies will be your enemy. And you get some of them.
Perhaps.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio. The voice of progressive Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Thank you, Gary Hines, Sounds of Blackness, for giving us this music. We are victorious. We're victorious, and we're going to be victorious. We're going to be listening out for President Biden today on voting rights. Will he throw his support behind uh, setting aside the filibuster so that we can get these voting rights through? And what happened in Texas? I don't know. Commissioner Rodney Ellis, I think you have just been such a influence having these state house Democrats run away in order to save our voting rights. Everybody call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text. We want to hear what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts? And what can be done on the state level? What can be done on the federal level? Nearly 400 pieces of legislation in 48 states are active right now that can peel away our voting rights. Just want to know what your thoughts are. We've got Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis leading the way, helping them to know how they can run away. But we've got Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. We owe her a tremendous debt of gratitude for really muscling through, marshaling through, and having the sensitivity, and sensibility to really help us to get this iconic moment in our history, Juneteenth, acknowledged. It is now a federal holiday. We thank God for you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. How are you today?
Santita, you have me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. Is this Ron
You have
Reynolds?
a great young lawyer. If that's Garrett
I love it.
on the line, Garrett, I'm gonna ad lib until she can come on. Santita, I do want to say that the notion of breaking a quorum is a well-used tactic for state legislative bodies throughout history. In fact, I'll give you a footnote in history. One of the most famous quorum breakers in the history of the world was Abraham Lincoln. As a state legislator in Springfield, he jumped out of the second floor of, I believe, the Second Presbyterian Church in an attempt to break a quorum. I think it was to stop some anti-banking legislation. I'm not sure if he was a Republican then or if he was a Whig before the Republican Party was established. And as it turned out, the quorum had already been established. He didn't know it, but old Abe, state legislator in Springfield, Illinois, jumped out of the window. Now, I'm sure you would ask, how would I know some obscure fact like that? Because as you said in the beginning, almost 20 years ago, it was 18 years ago, 19, because my daughter now is about to go to college. But my dear wife, your friend, Leisha, had our last child. And then I packed up to go back to the Texas State Capitol as a state senator in 2003 to break the quorum with my colleagues. There were 11 of us in the Senate that broke the quorum. Now, our House members led the way. Texas House members led the way back then because they broke the quorum maybe in April or May in 2003, a regular session. And they went to Ardmore, Oklahoma. What an odd place. But we senators, we packed up and went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Bill Richardson was governor. Imagine my wife had just had our last child, and I was there for the birth and then packed up and left. I didn't know if I'd be gone a couple of days, like the House members, 3 days. We were gone 47 days. And in the middle of the night, when you stuck at the Pyramid Marriott in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you look up a lot of stuff on the internet. And I was just Googling about 3 a.m. in the morning. It popped up, Abe Lincoln. So look, some people are saying, what's the end game for these Texas House Democrats and the 9 state senators? They need 11 senators to break the quorum in the Senate. 31-member body. Yes, they have 21 to conduct business. They have 9. They need another 3. They have 4 holdouts. They need 2 of them. I raised this question last night to a reporter. What was your father's end game, Santita Jackson? What was Reverend Jackson's end game? What was Martin Luther King's end game to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge? Did they not know there was a likelihood John Lewis would be whipped to a pulp? That Dr. King, Reverend Jackson could have been shot? Reverend Abernathy? you try and use the bully pulpit as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
You do demonstrations to try to captivate the minds of the world and the American people. So if they can delay this for 30 days, good. They'll not only kill this bill, even if the governor says he'll haul them right back in. The governor's putting all kinds of trash. That's what it is. All of this stuff to go and discriminate against transgender kids, everything other than doing something like what do you do to protect that grid in Texas. He didn't put that in the call, but all of that red meat stuff. And look, if your listeners are in Washington, D.C., and you can help those Democrats, I remember being in Albuquerque and friends who were in the legislature in New Mexico came over and said, Rodney, can we wash your clothes? My wife told me, she said, Rodney, you won't last 3 days because you can't afford room service to clean your pajamas and your shirts. You're only packing clothes for a week. And they can't just little things. They criticize me, but you couldn't go out to the casinos and all because they had some fool out there dressed up like a chicken plucking away in 100-degree weather, calling us chicken Democrats. But they take me bike riding. People came in from around the country, members of Congress, to help us out. I just told John Britton, used to be dean of TSU Law School, stopped by my hotel. I'm in D.C. for a county officials conference. I'm flying out in a few hours. I'm going to try to delay it if I can get a later flight so I can go back over to their hotel and, just wish them well. I was there when they landed. When they got to the hotel last night, I went by to see them. But look, it's an important deal. I would say probably 12 or 13 states, Garrett may know, or the Congresswoman, about 13 states so far have passed restrictive voting measures. These are poll taxes. They're just not as onerous, as heinous as they were. You're not paying the tax, but the idea is you can't do polls to the souls. What? They all going to hell. The idea of saying you can't go in your church service and give a great sermon, and then the pastor say, let's get on buses, and you can't go do that. You got to wait. You can't send applications for mail-in ballots to people who qualify but will not have a campaign with enough money to send them the application through the campaign, making it possible for anybody to pull a camera out and take a picture of you voting when you in the polling place. That's voter intimidation. And the bill that passed during the regular session, or that would have passed, that was on the way to passing, that bill would let anybody file a contest to an election and then put it in disarray. And if you broke and can't run another campaign, you're off the creek. It's Jim Crow 2.0. It's a modern form of voter suppression. It's really a new version of a poll tax because you want to make it more expensive, more difficult, more complicated for people to exercise that fundamental right that many people died for us to do. So, look, I'm proud of the Vice President of the United States. She was in Detroit yesterday. She spoke out in support of these Democrats, and I was proud of her doing that. The timing is perfect because as President Biden speaks in Philadelphia today, how can the press not turn to those Texas House Democrats who have broken their quorum and the senators from Texas who are trying to get the other two votes so they can break that quorum as well?
We're talking with Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis about the Texas Dems running away, breaking the quorum, so that they can thwart the GOP's push against the vote. Do we have Congresswoman Jackson Lee with us now?
While we're waiting for her, I do want to say, here's what I hope happens. Is she there, Congresswoman?
Well, we'll wait because we're also waiting for State Representative Reynolds as well. But what do you...
he was doing another interview and then he's going to come on. Look,
that's right.
The best success they can get would be if they can get Senator Manchin.
Mm-hmm.
If the House has passed the bill, the John Lewis bill, the challenge is to get the Senate to break the filibuster or whatever provisions of the John Lewis Act that Senator Manchin can support. Senator Sinema from Arizona can support. Pass that, because here's what's so important. If they can pass the bill, get it to the president's desk, and get it signed before September, the Texas bill would probably go into effect in September unless they have a supermajority vote to give it immediate effect. It would go in effect in September. We need pre-clearance. So all of this foolishness can be reviewed by the United States Justice Department. So, and I know normally they take a break, Congress does during August. And the timing for this is perfect because if it can encourage Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, if in some way they can learn from the mistakes of our past in this country, voting rights matter. 13 states have already passed restrictive measures. States you wouldn't expect. Not all of them are in the Deep South, by the way.
Hello.
Iowa.
Good morning.
Congresswoman.
Congresswoman, good morning. Good morning. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, everybody.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good
How are you?
morning. Before you go forward, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done to give us this federal holiday acknowledging, not just the end of slavery, but the malfeasance, the fact that people were trying to keep us in slavery, even though we've been freed from it. I want to thank you for all the magnificent work that you have done. But let me get right to it because time is short. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Texas, you got to help me. What can be done on a federal level? What do you expect the president to say today? Is there anything that he could say that could help to mitigate what's going on in Texas?
Well, first of all, thank you so very much. I'm very pleased to be joining my commissioner who has a long history in all of these fights. And thank you so very much. Juneteenth obviously was not the end but the beginning, but it was a very long journey. And I will not be on any lines of communication without saying that the next step, of course, is H.R. 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals that really is intertwined with legislation like voting rights and, of course, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I cannot be on a renowned communication force like you without letting your voters and listeners know that it's a vast array of issues as well as the American Jobs Plan that we're now facing in Washington, D.C. A lot can be done. And first, I think I want to applaud but also honor the Texas Democratic state delegation that has gone to Washington, D.C. I never use the term fled, has broken quorum and are basically our heroes of today. People need to understand. I saw something in a tweet by someone named offered to tweet behind my tweet where I was applauding their actions. I'll let the person go unnamed because their theory was that black people were not thwarted by voting, had every right to vote. They were voting better than they were voting in the 1970s. They just need to get up and vote. What an atrocious and limited and narrow interpretation of what our fight is about. You're fighting about what is going to be a major suppression. The element of the Texas legislation that we should understand is the criminalizing of certain minor infractions in voting. And so the whole idea is to not go back to Jim Crow, but to build a whole new infrastructure of Jim Crowism, which means your elections could be overturned with a lesser standard, which means you don't have drive-through voting, which was so successful here in Houston. You don't have the freedom of the mail balloting. You can't help senior citizens by making sure that their votes get mailed in. You have videotaping of disabled persons being helped in the polling places, and you empower poll watchers to be Gestapo. Does anybody understand what that means in chilling the effect of voting? So their fight is a very serious fight. Now, let me clarify. The bill that's in the United States Senate now is called For the People's Act. It is the toolkit of voting. It is the one that talks about a holiday. It talks about the early voting processes and the mail balloting processes, and it gives the protection to the toolkit of voting that we put in place in states like Georgia and Texas that the suppressive vote bills have had that are now denying that. The John Robert Lewis Voter Enhancement Act is in construction, and that is what we have to move more expeditiously but more cautiously. So it's an interesting terminology, expeditiously and cautiously. Why? because we're dealing with an additional attack on voting rights, which was the case out of Arizona where they undermined Section 2. In essence, the Trump court, the oppressive 6-3 court, indicated the heck with voting rights for every American. And I think it should be clear. It is those of us of color who are on the front lines. But never let it be left to not say that my voting rights being denied is going to be your voting rights to may be perceived as a majority community. My lack of being able to mail in a ballot is going to be your lack of mailing in a ballot, your lack of drive-in voting, your lack of having your elections preserved and sanctified. So in any event, what we have going on now is that we have Section 2 under attack of the Voting Rights Act. That's the position that we had. It was the last desperate lifeline of a drowning man or woman, which says that if you have a voting infraction, you can go into the federal court and file a lawsuit. Can you believe it? That is now being attacked. So the civil rights leaders understand that we're in a crisis. We're in a desperate trying to save drowning people. And what has to happen is, first, that filibuster rule has to be addressed. And I hope the president, though he is an institutionalist, and I appreciate that he will be making a major speech in Pennsylvania, it is important that he says to the American people, the filibuster is not a constitutional provision. It is a rule of the Senate. Everybody needs to understand that a rule can be put in and taken out. I frankly take the filibuster out for a number of bills and put it back in. If that's the way that we can attract our fellow Democrats, 2 Democrats in particular. Take it out because we're in a crisis, a constitutional crisis. Take it out, put it back in. Then the other form is that the John Robert Lewis bill still has to be written, still has to be passed in the United States House, and then go to the Senate. I believe that it will have a more, how should I say it, received response or positive response once it hits the United States Senate. We have to be able to do it cautiously, effectively, but expeditiously now in the United States House of Representatives. So that's where we are. We are under a crunch. We're under a constitutional crisis because voting rights is protected. Everyone should walk around saying 15, 15, 15. That is my right to vote. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments came dealing with those of us who had been enslaved, and the 15th Amendment said that you could have an unfettered right to vote. But when we got the right, it also gives the right to people of color, of women, of poor people, of everybody. And that's what our message should be. You are denying and undermining the right for people to vote. Cubans are in the streets right now. Santita, as you well know, so many of us have embraced the democracy and the issues dealing with Cuba as we're dealing with Haiti. All of these people fighting for democracy. How dare we in the United States show ourselves not to be the defender of democracy when poor peoples around the world are fighting every day for their life and their democratic life. So that is where we are. The fight goes on. I'm in the fight. I'm grateful to everyone who is in the fight. Don't take it lightly. And anyone who wants to send me a tweet and tell me that black people have the right to vote like they more than they've had at any other time should, like my grandmother said, and everyone's mother has said to them, wash your mouth out with soap. We are in a fight for our lives.
What should we be doing? I mean, how can we're waiting to hear what the president has to say today? Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. And you just made the point. You can keep the filibuster in you can take it out for this and put it back in for everything else, or you could selectively use it. Should we be pressing the president and our representatives to make that happen? Congresswoman Lee.
Yes, and I thank you for having me. I'm going to sign off after this. I'm headed to another hearing right now on criminal justice reform, but grateful to be with my good friend. But let me just say this. We're in a crisis, and we're not exaggerating. And the reason is because once the laws are passed, it is so difficult to undo them unless you have the federal protection, which would be in H.R. 1 for the People's Act and the John Robert Lewis bill. And many people think that the John Robert Lewis bill is already in the Senate. So it is important to say this for the People's Act is the first step. And I would be calling all Democratic senators. I would not let Senator McConnell, the Republican leader's phone, go untapped. We are working with a coalition of women from across the nation who will be in Washington on July 15th. We should not let up on our insistence that America be America, meaning America upholds her values, her constitutional values, her practical values. That is, that we fought and died for the right to vote. So I do think it is important. Use social media, use calls, show up in Washington if you can. Join in supporting financially. Join in supporting the Texas Democratic delegation. They're leaving their families. They're leaving their income. They're committed to staying until this session is over. And they're being threatened with denying of their personal liberties by a governor gone wild, talking about arresting them when they come into the state or not. They have young families. They have new babies. So this is a serious commitment, nothing having to do with publicity or any other stunt. No, it is not a stunt. They're taking their life in their hands. So we who can listen, your powerful audience, you have a powerful audience, and may I just give my respect and just the leader of voting empowerment, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, my friend, the friend and fellow soldier and general on the battlefield to the late Dr. Martin Luther King. We honor your dad. We honor your family. We honor my colleague, former Congressman Jesse Jackson, who fought and fought and fought. And so the word is get up and do something. Tweet, travel to Washington. Make sure your voices are heard. Encourage the president in his speech. Ask him to speak about this Senate rule. If not speaking about it, engaging with the concept of removing it for a bit, removing it for this crisis that we're in, civil rights crisis, and then obviously a rule can be put back in place so that the majority can be maintained in 2022. That's what I think we need. No one needs to be idle in this fight. Everyone needs to use their voice, their fingers, their bus ride, their summer trip, whatever it is, be in the fight for civil rights. America needs you, and we cannot do this fight alone.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you so much for all that you've done and all that you do. Thanks to her and her dogged pursuit of acknowledging what happened to us
Thank you.
in
Thank you,
slavery.
Commissioner Ellis, for all you do.
Thank you. Oh, we thank
Have
you.
a good day, Congresswoman.
We just love Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and I want you to come back, Congresswoman. Please come back. And
I love it. Thank you.
we love
Gotta
Garrett.
talk about reparations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad she did correct that John Lewis Act has not passed the House yet. They're still negotiating the final terms. But look, I think she's right. If you in Illinois or wherever your listeners are, whatever they can do to make, as Congressman Lewis said, some good noise in a constructive way. That filibuster rule was put in place as a tradition to block civil rights legislation during that era. And LBJ had a Democratic House. His party, our party, my party had control of the House and the Senate, but many of them were Dixiecrats. They were Southern Democrats, and they were using the filibuster. He had a lot more tools in his arsenal. You know, you had earmarks. There were things that he could do, the horse trade. And you had your dad, Dr. King, many others with the movement, an unfortunate assassination of a president that helped touch the conscience of this country. But whatever people can do in a constructive way, you might ask the leaders of your sorority or fraternity what you can do to encourage Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, because that's what a real fight is.
I got 20 seconds.
Give a great speech. Yeah, and he's doing it all he can. But in your community, whatever you can do. In Texas, if we got Bexel elected to the Senate, by the way, we'd have had an extra vote.
Absolutely.
51 Democrats.
Absolutely. You know what?
Thanks for having me on. I hate for Representative Reynolds.
Well, you know, he just tried to call in. He just tried to call in. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to try and get him tomorrow. And if we can, we'd like to get you back. Because I think you can, you know, help us to really understand what is going on, because they're not going to be able to go back anytime soon.
No, anytime. Let me know. I love you.
I love you.
To check in.
We're going to speak with State Representative Reynolds tomorrow, hopefully, on the Santita Jackson Show. Keep a lookout, everybody. Keep a lookout. You can do something about this. We need to secure our voting rights. I love everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Okay, I don't know what happened, Dylan. He was trying to call in. Well, what happened?
No, I didn't see him at all call in.
Yeah, that's why I sent him. I sent him the numbers. He tried to call in. So let me call him. Let me call
He tried
him.
to call in on either the warm or the green. That wouldn't have worked because you had both Jackson and.
I told you to keep those lines open because we had them calling in.
Right, but if you have Jackson and the other one on both of those lines, there's only two of them.
No, that's why I wanted those lines open because remember because these people were going to call in, just at least one of them because I gave them both numbers.
Okay, Rodney Ellis and Sheila Jackson were on both.
I know, that's why I said keep one of those lines open.
Okay,
I need you to hear me.
The phone lines were messed up today.
No, okay,
so did you give them both warm and
yeah,
green lines?
I do.
Then?
Yeah, so they have the options, and I also call them. That's why I said whenever I let you know going forward, because I
give it to more than
just hear me.
You're going to give it to more than two people.
No, hear me. No, hear me. I understand that. I produce this. So I already know. What I'm saying to you is, whenever I have people call in, and this is just going forward. So as you learn to produce a show, this is what you do. You give these people the options. I give them the call-in numbers, the 773 number, and I also give them those warm and the hot and warm line numbers. And when I have people who are calling in, because generally people like Congresswoman Lee, don't want you to call them. They'd rather call in for a whole lot of reasons, like she's on her way to meetings. Okay?
Okay.
So I can learn that. I leave those lines open, and I call in numbers. Even if they call in, I will tell them I will call you back, and I will another number so that I can leave those lines open so that they can call in. So, because I'm giving them those numbers. And I'm also giving them the call. If I have people who are calling in, I leave those lines free. Every show I produce. If I were in studio, I would have had. That's why I said at the top of the show. I'm going to leave those lines open because these people just are calling in. One guy is literally typing, Mr. State Representative Reynolds. So people, when the position that he's in, sometimes you can't call them. You don't know if his cell phone's been blocked. There's so much that's going on. Okay, so all you have to do is ask me, and I'll share things with you because there's a lot of stuff that I do know. Okay, and phone issue. Are you there? Hello? Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good one.